Hi, I'm Heather Morgan with Salesfolk and Salesforce Startups, and I'm here today talking with two very early members of the Pardot team, Derek Grant on the left and Matthew Sweezey on the right. And Derek is the VP of Sales, and Matt is the brand evangelist. And if you don't know about Pardot, Pardot does B2B marketing automation for Salesforce. Hi, guys.
Hey.
How's it going today? You're in Georgia?
Yeah, we're in, some people say hot Atlanta.
I like that. So I'm wondering, what was the core idea behind Pardot originally, since you guys have been with the team for a while?
You know, I'd love to defer that question to Matthew Sweezey. He's so great at these things. You're pitching. I get it. All right, please.
All right. So the general idea was, how do you help people get, the underlying idea is three basic things. One is connectivity of data. You have a marketer and an organization doing all these different disparate activities. How do we do all of those from a central location? That's number one. Number two is then when they're done in different locations, the data sets live in different places. So getting all that data inside is number two. So one is easier execution. Two is a consistent data set. And then three was a level of automation and then do things on top of that. That's kind of the techie speak. The idea was really how do we help drive more leads to an organization more efficiently and more effectively for really we started off in the SMB space.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, one of the things that we found, we definitely used the fast follower principle, was the premise that there were tools of their day, but those tools were complex. They were sort of version 1.0 types of platforms. So companies like Pardot and several other companies that started in 2007, 2008, all set out to build an easier to use platform to be able to help marketers be able to achieve these terrific results.
That's great. So actually, first of all, how was selling for Pardot in the early days before you guys really had a strong brand name like you have now? I'm sure it's totally different than your sales challenges now, right?
That's right.
It was tough.
You know, it was interesting because you think of marketing automation as really the combination of a number of different point solutions designed to provide a single view of the data, as Matthew mentioned. And so we would call people and we would talk about prospect nurturing, and they would say, no, thanks, I have an email tool. Or we would talk about being able to set a tracking beacon so we could monitor website behavior.
No thanks, I have Google Analytics.
That's right, that's right. And so we saw a lot of those because it was a relatively uneducated marketplace, because there were just the marketing automation was only reserved for the most highest level company. So it became a very educational sale. I still look back, I went back a few years ago and looked at the press releases that we and one of our more direct competitor would issue, and it'd say, we've signed 12 clients, we did it, or 12 clients, and they'd say they did 15, and, boy, we couldn't hardly be more excited. But what we found is that there was a huge influx of capital into marketing automation across a number of different vendors. And our peers, and I think also we have done a nice job of being able to help people understand why they can't live another day without this transformational technology. And so now it's less about why they should use it, and it's how ours is unique and how it differs. But it has been a real transformation. I don't know if you want to add anything on top of that.
Exact same. Just it was the growing of a marketplace, and anybody as an entrepreneur trying to start off in a new marketplace, you spend most of the time educating, and our industry just it wasn't like Derek said, it was like 1.0 to, it wasn't even 1.0 to 2.0, it was like 1.0 to driving a spaceship. That's kind of what the transformation was. And so it was so much for people to understand that it really took a lot of money from all collective of the industry to really educate people, and now it's just a hot topic.
One of the things that we've always said is that the rising tide does lift all ships. And so for everyone in the space, I think we all pulled together, although we were working against each other and continue to do so. But I think the unified efforts and everyone really working together did help marketers understand how they could be more efficient, more effective, and how that could actually drive better sales performance. And so it really took a village, I think. Really, us and our competitors, I think we owe them a lot of credit for helping make all of our jobs easier today.
That makes a lot of sense. It's sort of like that crossing the chasm approach where like you have the really early adopters with all the education. So I'm thinking about that, and there are a number of other spaces that are kind of facing similar challenges right now. Some of it is in the prospecting and technology and sales intelligence. So since you guys came from a space that was very empty and new in the beginning and now is quite crowded, but you don't need the education factor the same way, what were some of the things you learned with sales and marketing that were really effective for early education?
Turn to this from a marketing perspective.
Yeah, so the number one thing that we found that made our salespeople really effective was understanding the role of the people they were selling to. So what we found was my past background, I'd had a startup, I was really heavy invested in marketing, I'd written a blog on marketing for a while, shut my startup down and came to work for Pardot. And when I would talk with people, I knew exactly the pain points they had. So I could say, you know, when you do this and this happens and how this doesn't do this, and like, yes. And I was like, well, we can solve that. Whereas we weren't just like pitching a product, we actually knew the ins and the outs. And I think that was kind of the big thing for us, is that was what made it really helpful and effective. And then two is making it as simple as hell to understand, right? When you're trying to, like Derek said, when someone says, oh, I already have that. So you had to figure out how to tactically get them to the same end of, hey, that sounds cool, but without giving them the ability to say, I don't need that or I have that, right? The whole, how do we allow them to not disqualify themselves?
You know, one thing that was pretty important for us was to be really specific about what it was we were going after. I think so often everyone wants to hunt the whale, everyone wants to bag the elephant. And so for us, our founder, Adam Blitzer, and his co-founder, David Cummings, they actually came up with a theory that elephants are big, they're slow moving, they take a lot of firepower to bring down. Rabbits, fast, but when you get one on the ground, it doesn't have a lot of meat on it, there's not much yield. And really, we set out to be deer hunters. We were looking for companies that had enough size to have a marketer, they had enough money to be running campaigns, they were using Salesforce.com. And so we set out in the middle, and what it prevented us from doing is a small company who's resource strapped from, hey, here's an RFP you need to do. No, we don't do that. Hey, fly out and meet us. Sorry. We believe this could all be executed remotely. And so that was one of the big pieces for us, was learning to say no and learning to be super objective about what the potential upside of the deal was. You know, also fishing in the right ponds was pretty important. I know you remember the days when we would, we didn't go and take the Fortune 500 list and determine who we were going to call. That wasn't our call down list. It was the Inc. 500 list. It was the Deloitte Fast 50.
It was the technology companies inside the Inc. 500 list. And then we would even go even deeper than that, and then we'd go start scraping JavaScript off their sites to figure out, who were the ones using the most progressive technologies, because we knew they were the ones. And you could even see if they were using competitors. And, so the more knowledge we had on people, like Derek said, the smaller our pond became and the more hyper-focused we could be. And that's how we were so effective. We had the smallest team of any of our competitors.
That's right. And certainly the smallest war chest.
Yeah, we didn't have any VC money. So it was all like, how could we be scrappy? How could we be targeted? And we just got smart.
And now the tools are so much further along. Tools like Built With is such a good example. Tools like SalesLoft, tools like Data.com, to allow us to be able to have access and to be able to be refined. But I think more of it is having an opinion about what it really is that we're hunting for.
Yes, yeah, totally.
And not trying to be all things all when really being laser focused.
Yeah.
No, I think that's a really good point. And I hear that a lot from my own clients because I help people with cold emails and building systems for prospecting for B2B. But also even with my own company, which is bootstrapped, I've scaled up a lot, and it's just been really following those practices and like 80-20 rule. Okay, who are my best customers, my ideal customers? And those are the people that don't take a ridiculously long time to sell and not a ridiculously long time to like start the relationship with, but also big enough so that the relationship is worthwhile, since every relationship takes a bit of time getting to know the company and who you're working with and their needs. So it's like finding those middle-sized companies, and what I found for me, it's like Series A B2B companies, because that's a stage where it's not just about money. Yeah, it's about like you've gotten this far, you know what you're doing, you have product market fit. And so I can help you. Whereas, like, if you don't know what the hell you're selling still, it's a lot harder.
Yeah, you know, someone told me it takes as much effort to marry rich as it does to marry poor. I'm glad my wife
I
did
love
not
that.
take her own advice on that. But yeah, we want to find someone who at least has got the resources to be able to have that meaningful long-term relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and it's just kind of interesting too, like with startups. The pool is getting bigger with so much VC money floating around and angel money. But there's so much noise and there's so much range in terms of quality of like people that really know what they're doing and they're going to crush it versus people that like God knows how they got any money and somehow,
we call that plain startup.
Yeah, exactly. So I think, yeah, you're right. It's really important, especially for B2B startups, to think about who they're selling to because they don't want to spend a bunch of time selling to unqualified leads or leads that are going to take them way too long to close. Yeah, so anyways, today, what's your sales process like? You mentioned you're using, I'm assuming you're still scraping things and doing a lot of inside sales. What's that whole process like today?
You know, for us at this point, I think we're still a scrappy startup inside of the world's most innovative, cloud computing leader. But for us now, we have the keys to the kingdom of really all the Salesforce.com customers. So our prospecting is now inside the Salesforce.com customer base, and it's being really strategic about who we're focusing on inside of that. From a sales cycle perspective, it is primarily still inside. Serving mid-market and down. We do have a field-based team that does focus on enterprise accounts, but for the most part, our lion's share of reps are selling a deal that takes in the neighborhood of about 45 days to close. Is done mostly inside. Straight sale, no RFP process, and so it hasn't changed dramatically being inside of Salesforce. Just we have a much more targeted group of people to work off of now.
That's cool. So it sounds like you guys have enjoyed the transition decently well.
You know, it's been great to be part of the family. We knew way back when. Well, I don't know if we knew, but I think most startups have the vision of what happens if this vendor, if the definitive leader in the space makes a bet in your space. And so for us, I think we always knew marketing automation is so additive to sales teams with the tracking, the sales alerts, the ability to recycle people into nurturing campaigns. We figured Salesforce would eventually make a bet. We're really happy it was us. I know that is something that anybody would say. That's probably the no-brainer comment of the day. But we certainly were glad to be invited to the dance on this.
That's awesome. So moving forward, I mean, every organization has different challenges that they're working on with sales and different goals. What are some of those challenges and goals, and how are you trying to tackle them?
I mean, the number one goal is you got a pipeline of leads. So that's where it all starts. So, I mean, we do a lot of innovative stuff on that side. So that's, there's, whether it be account-based marketing, whether it be advanced cross-channel nurturing, whether it be, pushing the envelope on, what an email nurturing program can look like, what it can be, content marketing. Our content team just won, content marketing of the year award from Content Marketing Institute in Palooza. I mean, so that's what we do on the front side, and then we pass it. Of course, we qualify and do all the normal process. Then we get it to their hands, and that's then. I'll let you talk about your issues on that side.
As Matthew mentioned, I think everybody always wants more pipeline. That's one of the things that we're always looking toward. Our marketing team does a wonderful job of being able to source them. One thing I was thinking as you were talking about a lot of the different tactics that you're using, many of these don't necessarily require a huge amount of cash. As we're talking about startup and entrepreneurship, content marketing takes time. It doesn't have to be expensive. We do a number of trade shows. We'll be going to Dreamforce here a little later in the year, and that's obviously a big initiative for us. But a lot of white papers, a lot of webinars, a lot of blogs, creating content.
Just still the good things, right? Provide good, valuable help, whether it be from the sales perspective, like we said earlier, where our salespeople just knew more excuse me, usually knew if not the same amount or more than the marketers we were selling to, just because they'd been in marketing roles and had startups. And I was doing SEO, and I was in SEO arbitrage before I came over. I was like, you're going to talk about SEO? I'll talk all day long how you want to SEO your website. And your competitor says that this is going to help. Like, actually, that won't. This will help. And so then you can like talk about that stuff. Yeah. It's just Scrappy and doing those different types of things.
That's right. But I think that as we think back to sort of our early days, we actually, one of the things that I would recommend for all marketers who are using marketing automation, particularly in a startup mode, is don't be so picky. I'd love to get your feedback on this, but if the person raises their hand, if they show a level of interest, and if they aren't fatally flawed, we hear so much about this, things like the perfect score, the perfect grade, but in a startup where leads are finite and oftentimes very difficult to generate, and when you're building awareness, there's not as many of them, I would really recommend that marketers really take a turn at almost all of them. Let sales have them and give them the opportunity to recycle them back if they don't have that meaningful engagement.
Yeah.
But that was super important for us. That's right.
Yeah.
And now we have an embarrassment of riches where instead of it being not enough, we have so many that now we're having to qualify great people out instead of taking everyone and trying to qualify them in. So that's been a little bit of a shift. I don't know that it qualifies under challenge, but certainly it's been a shift in the way we've gone to market. Yeah,
and if you want to take that to like a little bit further of an example, I mean, the concept is if someone downloads a white paper from you, the theory is that they're in what we call batch research mode. So they're going to download multiple pieces of content from multiple vendors.
That's right.
And it would be a fallacy to think that those other vendors aren't going to have some type of reach out. And then all the statistics say the first person to reach out has, 70%? 78% chance of winning.
Right?
That's right.
Yeah.
You have the ability to then forge that. And then you figure your salespeople have the ability to start uncovering different things. If you're in an educational market, really, your content is there. It's just there to get you a name.
Yeah.
Right? It's there to get you, it's organic way of getting the name, so you don't have to pay for it directly.
That's right.
And then let your salespeople get in there and help educate. They can help guide. They can help uncover. And that's how we really sped that whole process up. But I'm totally with Derek. Don't expect for a perfect score because there's no such thing.
And one of the things is we were, sort of pre-Salesforce and pre-Exact Target. It was trying to amplify the signal. There was a signal, but it was one that we were trying to get more of these great prospects who had a level of interest. But now it is trying to filter out the noise, and that is really the shift. Having a company like Salesforce behind us, it really raises the profile. So now instead of us trying to figure out a way to generate more good traffic, it's trying to be maybe a little bit more restrictive and sort of more quickly cut cord on people who maybe don't necessarily fit as well.
Yeah, and I think with the content, it's somewhat self-selecting, right? Like, the more you know who your target audience is, that persona, that role or those roles, the more you're creating content for them. So, like, it's self-selecting, right? Like, you create content for the VP of sales at a medium-sized company, and that's what you're going to get for the most part. You might get some random people interested in it, but, like, the more specific your content is and helpful to a specific demographic, the more the quality of leads just matches that.
That's exactly right. And, to Matthew's point about the perfect score, I think it's more about the engaged ideal customer, more so than it is a score of 71 or whatever the particular number is. I think sometimes we get so, even as practitioners, we get so wrapped up around some of the minutia around the detail. Find the person who's the engaged consumer who fits the ideal customer profile and really pass them to sales, do it quickly, and just like you mentioned from that MIT study, get them there first. It allows you to play offense instead of having to play defense.
Yep.
Yeah, that's a great point. So I'm really curious, since you guys have done a lot of content out of like white papers, blog posts, webinars, and everything else, is there something in particular that you're seeing is really helpful right now for sales? Like, what's driving leads the most right now? Is there something specific or a specific campaign?
It's not really, that's the silver bullet question.
Yeah, of course. But I'm just curious, like, is there, in the last 6 months, has there been something that you're like, oh shit, this performed really well, like, we're doing more of this?
Yeah, so here's like the secret sauce that everyone's after right now, and it's not, don't think of like content as like a white paper or whatever. Think about more like the delivery, right? There's two aspects to content. There's your creation, and we all understand that if it's a crappy article crappy story, regardless, it's not going to get engaged with. So status quo, you have good content. Then the problem is distribution. The best way right now for distribution is through via paid social media, right? So you've got to do hyper-targeted personalization in feed via Twitter, via Facebook. You can get into Pinterest is starting to open up different channels. Then you can start getting into account-based marketing and cross-channel retargeting and tying all that back to your marketing automation platforms so you have the right message, the right person at the right time. And it's all about relevance at scale. And that's really that's the trick, right? How do you either first off target to get in front of them, that's by paid social, and then you can use all those other cross-channel tools. And that's really why it's such an exciting, that's why you're seeing all the money and investment in marketing. So these things just make it a game changer, right? So I mean, then the theoretical question, not to get too heady, then it becomes is, does the internet then become a hall of mirrors, right? So then it's everywhere I go, then
it follows you around.
Yeah, is it only a reflection of my past self and past things I've looked at? And I don't know, I wrote an essay on that recently. I'm just saying that is fun. It's fun stuff to think about.
That is pretty theoretical.
Well, actually, on that note, so as we know, like, these new technologies are happening, and we're reaching a point where they're not just brand new to everyone, and more people are using them. It's kind of like that middle tipping point phase. Yep. How do you see the future of automation for sales and marketing then? Like, are there some things that you think will become even more effective or less effective, and why? Like, I mean, be as idealistic or dystopian as you want.
All right, so everything always has iterations, right? Exactly. So when the websites came out, the next iteration was SEO, then the next iteration was email, then the next iteration was social, then it was mobile, and it's marketing automation. Next is going to be consumer experience, right? How do you manage that consumer's experience over the lifetime to maximize the value of that, right? Because now what we have the ability to do is see what was the first touch, what was their revenue year one, what's their revenue year two, and then you're going to start seeing marketing automation being used by salespeople through like their own automated micro campaigns. You're going to start seeing it by the support team for customer for life movements. You'll be able to see that, you know, the support will now have like ties into everyone's SaaS application. Everyone's selling technology, right? You have the ability to see like how long a person's spent in your application when they didn't, and then that can automatically then run automations, let a support person know, put that on the top of the advocate's call list, automate messaging inside your app, dynamic content in app. So it's all going to be about the experience for the lifetime experience of that customer. And it's just all these technologies are just going to meld together. They're all starting in different places.
You look at marketing automation really as being really solving for that pain point. It was a bunch of different silo solutions, but you're trying to actually get a better lead to your salespeople in a more timely fashion and make them aware of that. One of the pieces of technology that I love and want to see us continue to use and be able to really optimize the experience on is the nurturing campaigns sort of post lead generation that are sales generated, as you touched on. And we jokingly say it's faking sincerity, but I do think
you created that term, Derek.
I love that term, actually.
We actually created that term.
A trademark. With that said, though, the ability to be able to figure out better ways to be able to deliver relevant, meaning content in an authentic-looking manner, consumers through their buyer's journey. I think we're all doing a very adequate job of that, but it's not the big marketing machine, the faceless, nameless marketing machine, but rather, hey, my rep actually sent this, and that's awesome because I just was interested in that the other day. So being able to figure out ways to be able to leverage some of their different interactions, to be able to serve up that right information. Also, one thing I think that all marketing automation vendors have missed on is you mentioned the house of mirrors earlier. We all look in the rearview mirror. We all look and see how a campaign performed post-mortem. Oh, this email had this open rate. But I do think the next big thing is predictive analytics, allowing us to be able to go out and say that a buyer of this type has responded to these 10 different messages. Now let's figure out how to do it, to your point, not one-off, but do it once right and then do it at scale. And so I do think that that's really the big piece, so that the system will be able to help determine the optimal piece of content instead of it being sort of a linear thing that it is today. I think we all are sort of in that state where we decide what we think they should get. And we have to make a very focused effort to narrow down and to really segment very deeply. if the system were able to begin picking up on that, almost like Skynet, it becomes aware, and we know what happened there, then it would be able to start delivering that right content out. And so that's one of the things I'm really excited about is marketing automation. I think grows, as you said, from 1 to 1.1 to I think really 3 and 4.0. I think that's what we're going to see.
That's why it's just an exciting space.
Yeah, totally.
The only thing that would kill anything like this, it's not technology, it's people's use of the technology.
Yes.
And it's the lack of information. The number one thing, so we've been helping people get in these technologies for like 7 years, 8 years now. And so the number one thing we've seen is that people don't educate themselves on what they're currently doing as to then how it's done in the modern realm with modern tools. And they try to shoehorn old techniques into new tools. And that's where that's where all the wheels fall off and where people always, fall flat on their face. And then they're like, but you said it was, my favorite is, oh, they said this was going to be easy. Easy does not mean no work required, right? Or no learning required, or no changing required.
That's right. There's a little bit of change.
Yeah.
And there was a stat that I saw from Jupiter Research that said 89% of marketers send the exact same email to every consumer. You think about that. We've had technology to prevent that from happening for a decade, yet we're still doing it.
Yeah,
so,
absolutely.
I think the tool oftentimes, regardless of tool, but I think oftentimes the tool outpaces the user's ability to be able to wield that tool effectively.
Yeah.
And so I think we all need to make sure that we're sort of helping the marketer understand there is some change, right? People process the technology. I know it's a big SAP thing, but I think it's true.
Is there a book out there?
Okay. So shameless plug, Marketing Automation for Dummies.
You brought that up.
I did bring it up.
Good team. But yeah, so that's one of the things that we try to do to help people is, like the content is, I wrote Marketing Automation for Dummies. And it's in there, it's the whole point of, you can't try to do the same things you used to do. Technology's far surpassed our ability to use it. We just need to catch up to how to use it correctly and then get ready for the next waves like Derek's talking about.
No, I think all those points are really cool. And on Derek's note about like predictive analytics and behavioral predictive analytics for consumer behavior, every time I hear about this and think about it, it just starts to look more and more like behavioral economics. And some of the stuff that you see, like Dan Ariely with Price Economics doing, or not Price, predictably irrational.
Okay.
But he does price economic stuff. But yeah, no, I think it's a really interesting space, and so like.
I used to call that rational ignorance.
Yeah, no, I do too. Totally. Actually, that's what I used to call it as well. But yeah, no, I think we're moving toward a future where there will be more and more cohort data collected, and not just cohort data, but like all the other data attached to that cohort data around user behavior that will become more and more aggregated into, and not even just in one company, but like across industries, to where like you have like user profiles.
Yeah, it's just transparency, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Transparent. Every action you have will then layer on a level of transparency, because it will either add some type of causation or correlation that somebody will extrapolate. And there's one of the cool things on the sales note. Now they're using predictive analytics to figure out how likelihood this deal is to close in a time frame, and they can do that with like 85% accuracy. Yep. They can say that these actions have not happened. Don't focus on these 5 deals. Go focus on these 5 deals, and that stuff's just crazy mind blowing. I mean, you talk about resources, and the hard part is all these technologies cost money.
That's right.
Yeah.
So if you're a startup, I mean, you just can't go grab all these things today. The fun part is the speed of innovation. These things will be available in SMB platforms in very, very short order.
Someone will do the fast follower. They will do the easier to use item. As you talk about the cohort information exact target, one of their theories is he or she who owns the data wins. And it is being taken data from a number of different points. Something that just happened here in Atlanta is that the College Football Hall of Fame just opened. That's probably not surprising that the College Football Hall of Fame would be here in Atlanta. But apparently, very much like the show or the movie Minority Report, it personalizes your experience based on what it knows about you. So 2 people can go through, and it will show them information about their particular college football team.
No way.
So it's apparently very, very cool. But you think about
so
it.
Bobby Bowden is in every photo frame.
For me, he would be. And so, you know, being able to take that information out of them and to help their experience be much more optimized. And I think that helps them appreciate things better. And I think when you're talking about B2B sales, I think it helps them buy better because they're able to educate themselves, and you're just making it easier. You're the easy one to work with.
Yeah, not only is it easier, it's like you don't have to work as hard educating them because they're already getting the right resources going to them. And ideally, you're not spamming them the same way as some people do, where like when I work with clients, so I'll work with them on cold email and also sometimes drip. And they'll show me some of the emails they're sending out, and just like without even knowing their product super deeply, right away I can see you're sending like way too much content that is ideal for like 5 different personas to everyone. And what you should be doing is just like picking like which pieces would work for which persona, and which, not even just persona, but like, okay, like what kind of content are they downloading? What are they interacting with? But based on that, their problem looks like this, and so you shouldn't be sharing like all this other crap with them because they're just going to ignore it all and feel overwhelmed.
That's right. They tune it out. One of our partners in Canada had a commentary one time. He said, "You can't go from having coffee to making whoopee," and I thought it was such an interesting term. Because
oh my God.
Yes.
That is just like, so I have a phrase too. It's don't take your pants off on the first date. And it's,
I love it. All right, very nice.
It's in a bunch of my blog posts and content, but it's the idea of, like, okay, like you don't know this person. You're cold emailing them. Why the hell are you like telling them all these things all at once, and also like in a very salesy kind of tone?
Yeah. Fascinating part is the human mind now can disqualify an email in 1/20th of a second. So the humans disqualify emails, and so like if you look at the theory of a subject line, if you stack the subject line with all this brand and all this information, the consumer can disqualify that as a marketing message and a sales message.
Yeah,
before
exactly.
And then once they open it, then there's a whole nother, evolution of disqualify, disqualify.
That's right. They talk about the first 20 words in an email. I read a great article the other day as we talk about a mobile device. You get the subject and you get the first 20 or so words in the body, and so it has to be compelling. If it's not compelling, then the person's not going to engage. And I think also compelling is where they are in their buyer's journey. As we talk about, don't take your pants off on the first date. If you're telling the person, look, people who buy us never have any problems, they don't know yet that they even want to consider your technology. So it needs to be more broad. It needs to work its way to more focused, more ROI-centric, middle of the funnel, working down to risk mitigation as you work late in the game. And so my takeaway is that sometimes I think we do either go really broad and sort of throw it against the wall and see what sticks, or sometimes we send the wrong content to the wrong person at the wrong time. Your 3-2-1 theory of nurturing is a pretty cool one. It doesn't really work without a board, but Matthew's got a great video on the Pardot site, which is the 3-2-1 theory of lead nurturing. And the premise of it is when you have a database, the unwashed masses, you don't really know where they are in their buyer's journey. And it's a really practical strategy to be able to go out and help them self-select in and help them. So some who are late in the stage, you'll have the ability to understand that and to be able to really speak to them and handle them in a very specific way.
Yes, the whole technique came about when we were selling, and when it was me, Derek, and Kevin on the sales team, there's only 3 of us, and we might get a list of leads from the marketing team that came back from a trade show, and they're like, here's the list of leads that are qualified, or we had a bunch of leads that were deal dead or whatever. We would have to be relevant to Derek's point, we'd have to figure out what is relevant to them. Hence, we had 3 stages, and so then we'd say, all right, let's have one crafted to stage 3. That would go out first, and the next one a couple days later would go out to stage 2, and then they would self-select. So if someone opened that email, we would automatically use the automation, remove them from that campaign, then put them in a campaign to nurture that point in time. Right. And then we could follow up correctly with the correct messaging. We know exactly how to follow up with them. And that was, use our own technology to get super awesome.
Yeah, it's an incredible model, but just simply going with the most specific offer first. And the people who select that, you assume they're way through their buyer's journey. They are moving through the tail end of it. Those people, we should be engaging with the sales resource, the person who all the people who don't respond to that, you'll go ahead and send a more broad offer. And the people who don't respond to that, you send just a super broad offer. And the idea is like, if you don't opt out, we think you may want to hear from us.
Do you have a pulse?
That's right, yes. And so, but a very interesting model to help find people's location in that buyer's journey and make sure that you've got your pants on at the appropriate time.
Hey guys, I got to jump a minute or two.
Yeah, no, this is really, really great. And I think on email, one other thing that I found is it's really good to start with a question. Everyone's having like this monologue with email. Oh, we're just like shoving this message at you. But one thing I've actually found works a lot for increasing response rates and like click-through is starting the first sentence with a question that's actually very relevant and targeted to your persona, because then it gets them engaged there, and not just like a bullshit question, tell me more about your business, or like, what does company, I mean, something that's thoughtful, like, are you, and you can go positive or negative, like, are you having problems with XYZ, or like, and that's negative, or more positive, like, would you like to increase revenue by blah, blah, like, and I mean less salesy ideally, but a question that they're going to say yes to and start actually thinking about, because email and messaging, any kind of copywriting, it's all about engagement. So by asking them a question rather than a sentence in the first, like, just the first thing that they see, it's more likely to get them intrigued and get them, like, to read the rest of what you're saying.
You know, and it sounds like it's more of an implication type of question than a status question. It's not, are you bad at this, but rather, what would it look like if we could improve this by 20%, if we could optimize this, or reduce something. So really using that sort of messaging.
Right? And it engages their imagination too, right? Like, what would this be like? But like they're already thinking about like, okay, like, is this possible? Or they're thinking about their pain point and like they're imagining a scenario they're already dealing with, or you're evoking something they already kind of want.
Cool.
This video has been brought to you by Salesfolk and Sales for Startups. Visit us at salesfolk.com and salesforstartups.org. Thank you.